Good evening and welcome to TNM Bull Podcast. This is your host. My name is Will. I'm here today with a very special guest who is going to be coming onto the show regularly with this catch line. This is the very first episode of 30 Minute Murder. Danny, how are you, mate?
I'm good, mate. It's good to hear your voice. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. You know, lockdown's getting to us all, and it's nice to have a bit of human interaction again, isn't it?
Yeah, it's good, mate. It's good. I'm getting fatter. That's pretty much what lockdown's done to me, just increasing in mass. But yeah, I get exactly what you're saying, bro. It's difficult at the minute. Miss that human contact. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, mate. No, 100%. It's we get the announcement tomorrow. I'm not sure how it's going to go.
Yeah.
We will see. Right, so just to explain to everybody listening, me and Danny basically have teamed up and we're going to be bringing you a show called 30 Minute Murder. And it's basically 30 minutes on 30 minutes there or thereabouts on a particular murder case from around the world that we're going to give you the whole story, the lowdown, and then our viewpoints and opinions. So today we're going to start off with, I shouldn't say favourite, really, should I?
Favourite murder, yeah. You don't sound weird or creepy at all when you say it like that, but crack on.
So yeah, I won't say favourite, but probably my most well-known one that I am adapted to. It's the Amityville Horror.
Going in big.
At least you know that's the name of the actual the book anyway. So Danny, what do you know about the Amityville story before we get into the paranormal side of it as well? What do you know on a basis?
Well, Christ, it is obviously one of the biggest kind of kind of unsolved cases of a generation. So we're going back to, I want to say 1974, if I might remember right. So I don't know about obviously viewers kind of based on this, but Amityville is a little suburb in Long Island, and so a huge murder case in which a whole family was shot dead with one survivor, and basically before we get into it, there was a lot of sort of suspicious circumstances. There was a lot of kind of paranormal investigation done towards this, and essentially it's obviously about that murder case, and then subsequently after that, when a new family moved into the home, it's about their story too and what happened to them and the horrific turn of events that kind of unfolded from there. So it's got it all, mate. It's got it all. It's your typical whodunit. You've got that aspect. You've got ghosts and ghoulies. You've got Indian burial grounds. You've got everything, bro. It's huge. It's a massive kind of. Yeah,
it's a big one. It's pretty fucked up, really.
It's fucked up, big time. Yeah, big time.
So just touching on what Danny's been talking about, really. It was November 1974. I'll set the scene for you. Whole family are asleep. It's a bit of a stormy night. The weather was, which is a factor that we can bring into later. So just remember that it was a stormy night. Okay. Previous to this night, before I actually, unveil this, I'm sure Danny will know this as well. The family, they weren't a perfect family, were they at all, Danny? I know they had a nice house, good money, but they were not a perfect family at all. There was a lot of feuds going off between especially between Ronnie Jr. and Ronnie Sr.
That's the one, yeah. So there was quite a lot of when they sort of spoke to obviously the locals, because it was, Amityville, before we actually go into it even more then. So Amityville, when you think about the actual place it was, we're talking a really small kind of town. I think actually it's Amityville Village. So everyone knew everyone else. Everyone knows each other's business. Bit like actually where we're from, to be fair, dude.
Exactly.
Everyone knows about everything about everyone else. So it was quite sort of common knowledge that they were a family that they'd done well for themselves, good business, good money side of things, but there was kind of rumours about perhaps violence between father and son, and perhaps wife as well. So yeah, definitely, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, well, basically what happened was Ronnie Jr. He got himself into drugs and alcohol. Quite into his heroin. Loved his whiskey. And he was becoming a bit of a problem. He was expelled from school. He'd managed to get a job at his granddad's car dealership in New York, because Amityville is just literally, well, in American terms, because of the size of the country, a stone's throw away, but it's probably quite far if you're considering, English people and what we're used to travelling. But yeah, so basically Ronnie's mum and dad, Ronald Sr. and Louise DeFeo, they babied him up until a very late age, probably right up until he did what he did. They used to shower him with money and gifts, just to try and keep him on the straight and narrow, and it never worked.
But, I just thought you were going to say that they showered him then, like until he was at murdering age. They showered him up until that moment, which could have been what tipped him off the edge. You know what I mean? You might have been showered by your mum. It's the last thing you need, isn't it?
To be fair, I think I'd pull a 35 caliber Marlin rifle on my mum if she tried and showered me at this age.
Oh, sorry, carry on.
That's all right. So yeah, one of the most notable ones was Butch actually pulled a gun out. Butch is his nickname, for the listeners who don't know that. Ronald DeFeo Jr., his nickname is Butch. So we'll refer to him as Butch from now on, just to not get confused between him and his dad. Butch pulled a gun out on his dad after I think his dad had hit his mum. And Butch just lost control, pulled a gun out. And then Ronnie Sr. basically turned around and said, "You haven't got the guts, mate." And he pulled the trigger, but he misfired. The gun didn't actually fire. So that de-escalated from there. And it's a known fact that Ronald Sr., after that incident, turned into a devout Catholic. He believed in Catholicism. He bought a load of artifacts and actually named the house High Hopes.
Wow, yeah.
Ironic, but
yeah, just a bit.
But yeah, that's just a little bit behind all of that. But the night of the murders, what do you know, Danny?
Wow. Okay. So, well, just before, obviously, you just touched on the fact that you got like religious artifacts, like statues brought in. I think it was from somewhere in Canada or something like that. So it was obviously an expensive job. So he became really serious about this kind of like, religious side of things. And he had actually spoke to someone about getting the house exorcised because he was worried about Ronnie Jr. So there was a lot of speculation about all this being kind of, it's nothing to do with the paranormal, but he had actually thought this previously before, obviously, everything had kicked off. So yeah, anyway, night of the murders. So from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're talking about that Ronnie had got himself, bless his cottons, into a bit of a mess that night. He'd been on a heavy one. He'd put a few substances into his body. And the story pretty much goes is that he was sort of, as we've all been, monging out in front of the telly or what have you. And we're talking about, say, I think it's meant to be 3:15 in the morning that he kind of awakens or, comes back round from his daze. And his story is that he is greeted by a sort of the figure of a female who's got long black hair and weirdly black hands. That was like the big thing, which makes it, obviously he's thinking it's some sort of demon sort of thing, who hands him the gun. Because in Ronnie's head that evening, he'd heard voices and all sorts of things that his family were plotting to kill him, which of course is going to send you a little bit wacky if no else, isn't it? I mean, that's paranoia, right? So yeah, obviously he doesn't take kindly to that. And then when this demon or figure hands him the gun, well, then, I mean, he just goes off it, goes out one from there. He goes upstairs and puts bullets in them all. So you got 6 dead bodies of family members of the DeFeo family, all gone in one night. And that was Ronnie's confession shortly after this all kicked off.
Yeah, so basically, just in an order of timeline and events, you've hit the nail on the head, Danny, in everything you've said. There is nothing you've said there that hasn't been legally documented in a court case. And that, the listeners who, I mean, I'm sure everybody's heard of it, but if this is your first time hearing this story, the crazy thing about this case is that once Ronnie had confessed, he kept changing his story. Yeah. But the only story he ever really stuck to was the fact that he felt possessed by demons, and he felt like a hooded figure gave him the gun, and that his family were plotting against him to kill him. So basically, he went upstairs, straight to his mum and dad's room. He shot Ronald in the back, I believe it was, and then he got Louise through the chest. Quote me if I'm wrong. He then moved on to his two younger brothers, Mark DeFeo and John Matthew. They were both, I say fortunately because of the circumstances, but the coroner's report said fortunately they were killed instantly. There was no suffering with the two children. And if you can take anything light from, if you look past all the paranormal things, this is a family, this is a tragedy.
Absolutely.
And, the fact that it's happened shouldn't even be there. But if you're going to take any light, it is the fact that the kids didn't suffer. They were out. He then moved on to his little sister Alison. Again, I won't go too much into it because this is going on YouTube as well as Spotify, so I don't want to get done for graphic content. But if you only need to go on Reddit to see the photos. There's a whole crime scene thread on it.
It's disturbing, mate. It really is, isn't it?
I would not recommend looking at it. I did it for research purposes, and I don't think I'll be doing it again. But bless her, Alison, that was instantaneous as well. And if you see the crime scene photos, you will understand why. And then he went up to his eldest sister, Dawn's room, and finished her off as well. Now, Dawn is an integral part of this. We'll touch on her later. Because there is something rather interesting when it comes to Dawn. But basically, what happened after that was he got a shower. He went to work for 6:30 a.m. He dumped his gun and his bloody clothes in a storm drain in Brooklyn. Did work as normal, and then he went to the pub, the Witch's Brew, which is just down the road from Ocean Avenue, where they're based. That was at 5:30 p.m. Telling people he's worried, he's not seen his family all day, he's not heard from them. He even went as far as to call them.
Wow.
Even though he knew. Yeah. He actually used the payphone in the pub to call home to sort of say, no, they're not answering it. He used the excuse of he'd lost his keys. And then he went home, supposedly broke into the house, found the bodies, went back to the pub for 6:30 p.m, raised the alarm, and then that's when the authorities were made aware of this, and so on. So yeah, that was sort of a brief description of the night that it happened. Have you got anything you want to add to that, Danny? Or?
No, mate. I mean, I didn't know he'd been to the pub. Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That kind of takes you into his mindset a little bit of what was going on there. But no, for what I understand, that's pretty much the ins and outs of it. But yeah, you're absolutely right that his sister is quite an integral part of this, which obviously, like you said, we'll touch on later on. The thing is with the obviously we talk about this like it's quite a matter of fact, and like Will's just said, it was just a huge tragedy. But the issue was that there were certain things that didn't quite add up, which I presume is where we're going to go next. I mean, as I stated before, Amityville is a very small sort of village, especially when we're talking back in the 70s here. So everything's really close knit. Everyone's close together, and at the end of the day, there wasn't a single gunshot heard by anybody. Which is very strange, because obviously, I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to pretend I'm some kind of firearm expert, but I understand that this is a pretty substantial weapon that he's pumped some bullets into folk with, and the fact that no one heard that is very odd. For number one,
this is it. It was a 35 caliber Marlin rifle. Now, again, I'm not a firearms enthusiast. Neither are you. Quite simply because we're not American. But it's a big gun. It can cause some damage. It did cause damage. It killed 6 people.
Too right.
It also had no silencer on it. And when I said earlier about the stormy night, now there was no silencer on the gun. Okay. Now, the neighbours didn't hear any gunshots. There was no reported gunshots. They just heard the dog barking. Now, you could put that down to being a stormy night, a firearm inside a big house like that as well, with thunder and lightning. You may not hear it. I understand that from the neighbour's point of view. That is possible. But if you've gone into your mum and dad's room and shot them, I think he fired maybe six bullets at his mum and his dad. How has nobody in that house woken up?
This is it. This is where, that's where it is. You know, I mean, you're gonna hear that. You know, no matter how stormy outside it is, you're gonna hear that inside here. You know, your bedroom, aren't you? You're gonna wake up. It's too loud. And there was no signs of struggle. There was no signs of struggle from anyone. The bodies were found face down, which is also very weird, by the way. Again, but. No struggle, no sign of anyone waking up. It's just bizarre.
This is it. Like, how can six people all sleep on their fronts?
And
nobody move when they hear a gunshot. I've got cats, right? And if they even step along the corridor upstairs, I hear them.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, it's just freaky. And I think even. You know, just to put words to right, because people who've never heard this before, you may be thinking, right, they're all found face down, no sign of struggle. Oh, they must have been drugged at dinner. Toxicology report showed no drugs in the system.
Absolutely nothing. Which again, it just doesn't. So this is where, you know, when your first, you know, detectives or whoever start investigating this is where they're thinking, right, this really fucking ain't adding up now. And the most bizarre thing, and why this case is so famous, I suppose, aside from the paranormal aspect of it, but just from a criminology aspect, check me out with words, we don't know what happened. And no one really knows what happened.
No.
And that's why it's just so weird, because it just doesn't add up.
No, it really, really doesn't. And that all being said, let's go into the theories. Before we talk about the paranormal side of what happened with the Lutz family, we'll go into the theories of what happened. So the first theory is the paranormal theory that Ronnie DeFeo was possessed by a demon and that it made him shoot his family. We'll not go too extensively into the theories. We'll just say if we think they're true or not. Me personally, I don't think he was possessed. I don't. I think he was on a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol, and he saw a few things that he maybe, you know, shouldn't have done. What do you think of the whole possessed theory, Danny?
Do you know what? I'm very on the fence, and I know that's just a really easy stance to take, but simply because I see both sides of that, because I've obviously, you know, Will, I've been in hospital. I had a really serious accident, and I was on some very bizarre drugs after my car accident, and I saw a lot of, I hallucinated a lot, and these things, believe me, when I say it, they're real at the time, trust me. And obviously we can talk about that a whole nother time, right? But so I can see that the you know, the hallucinogenic drug side of things, absolutely 100%. I can see that. I can also see that someone simply saying, well, devil made me do it, mate. All right, that's fucking easy to say, right? That's an easy way to pass the guilt. You know, someone who's riddled with guilt from shooting the whole family can just say, yeah, demons made me do it. That's a pretty easy scapegoat. From the other side, though, as well, just as obviously we'll touch on this as we go on, the evidence that were gathered by renowned paranormal experts such as Ed and Lorraine Warren, for example, that isn't something that you can just pass up on as being you know, wishy-washy, because these people have devoted their life to that kind of thing. And so I must admit, mate, I'm quite 50-50 on I genuinely don't know. And I think you can, the fact that we don't know is what makes it interesting, and I think you could argue both ways, and it's a really tough one. But yeah, it's interesting.
This is it. It's not my favourite theory. I'll do my favourite theory last. Cool. But it is something to sort of think about and touch on. Now, the second theory is that Ronnie wanted inheritance and insurance money and thought, I'll blow everyone apart. And I personally, after watching extensive interviews with Ronnie DeFeo and reading the books and the case files and the crime scene photos and all of the reports, I don't personally believe that one person could be evil enough to to do that just for an insurance payout. His mum and dad give him money anyway.
Yeah, they were well off. He didn't have to resort to that. And not even that. I mean, fuck me, there's easier ways to do it. That sounds terrible. Fucking hell. Sorry. But set fire to the house. Right. You know, set fire to the house.
Yeah.
The violence of the crime doesn't add up to that as just a motive, in my opinion. No. Anyway, again, no expert. But...
I mean, in the first instance, he blamed a mafia hitman. Didn't
that because again, that's relevant to the time period though. In the 70s, of course, with them being reasonably close to New York, you know, a stone's throw away, if you will, Long Island's next door. There was big things with Italian surnames and, you know, mob-related things. But again, simply because this is an Italian family who's done well for themselves, so people speculate on things like that. But that, I think, if I remember rightly, was pretty quickly kind of blown out by the police, if that makes sense. So, but I know that's what was originally stated. Is this some sort of mob killing? And again, like I said, I just don't think that the violence of the crime could just be for I'm going to get my inheritance. I just think that there would have been easier ways for him to do that, wouldn't there?
If put it this way, so I know the mobster that was accused his first name was Louis. I don't know his surname. I can't remember it for the life of me. I didn't write it down. But basically, when Ronnie said it was him, they checked in with him, and he wasn't even in the New York state. He was in Chicago when the night of the murders. So he sort of came back. The police turned up at his door, and he's like, "What do you mean I was in Chicago?" They checked his plane tickets. They checked the hotel that he was staying at, and they were like, "Right, cool, no worries, mate. See you in a bit." Now this leads to the final theory that has got some sort of credibility to it. And I genuinely believe this one. This is what I personally believe.
This makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It really, really does. I believe that Dawn helped him. Now, for the listeners who, you know, don't understand the situation, Dawn and Ronnie were close. They were. And they'd always spoken about how much of a problem their father was and how he needed to go because he was tearing the family apart. Now, Dawn was also into her drugs, as well as Ronnie. And the long and short of it is, because there's no point spanning it out, is Ronnie and Dawn are planned to kill Ronald Sr. So Butch and Dawn are planned to kill him. And I think they'd agreed that night in November was going to be the night. Now, I personally believe that Dawn came downstairs wearing gloves, holding the gun, because she didn't want to get a DNA on the gun. Ronnie was out of his mind on heroin and drugs and alcohol. And Dawn said, "Come on, we've planned to do this tonight." She then took matters into her own hands because Ronnie couldn't even get off the sofa and passed out. And then what I believe happened is Ronnie fell asleep for an hour or so. Dawn went upstairs, shot her mum and dad. The two little boys woke up. She told them nothing's wrong, just go back to sleep, blah, 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 blah. Told them to turn on their fronts for some whatever reason, I couldn't tell you. Shot those two and then went and shot Alison and then got back in bed. And then I think that Ronnie woke up, went upstairs, discovered what Dawn had done, tried to get the gun off of her and ended up shooting her himself. Because I think there's a theory that she turned the gun on him and that he had to fight with her. Now, Danny, I don't know if you know this, but what backs my theory up is on Dawn's nightgown,
gun residue, wasn't there? Something? Yeah,
there was unburned gun residue, which only appears when you fired a rifle.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, this isn't something that is just out of the blue. I mean, with what we have to really get across is the fact that, you know, Ronnie and Dawn's father, he was a violent man. So, and a lot of people, you know, from the neighborhood or from the village itself had actually stated that a lot of that violence was onto Ronnie. He was the one it was projected onto. Now, the theory about Dawn helping it has to be substantial, because at the end of the day, they were very close. It was said that they were very, very close. In fact, there was a lot of rumours around the village of possible incest. Now, that's never been proven, but that's how close we're talking here, as in people had the idea that could be a thing. Now, even whether that's true or not, if it is, that's something that, there's a love bond between those two that is even beyond brother and sister. So, the fact that Ronnie's getting beaten by his dad on a regular basis, it does kind of warrant the fact that Dawn would be the kind of person who would, I love my brother and I can't have this happening to him anymore, if that makes sense. So it does throw some weight behind that theory, definitely.
Exactly. And the whole thing that makes me, think that this is the correct theory is when Ronnie was giving his stories out, his granddad, Louise's dad, basically Ronnie had said, this wasn't just me, Dawn did most of it. And then I had to shoot her because she killed the kids.
Yeah.
Like, why would you kill my little brothers and my little sister? And apparently Ronnie's granddad turned around and said, you will not use that story. Yes. You're not dragging my name through the mud any more than it already is. It is all on you. So yeah, that's a bit of an insight into what I believe of the theories. Now, very quickly, we're going to move on to the Lutz family. Now, we could talk about these for an hour, 2 hours, and what we will do is we will put this into a part 2.
Yeah,
so keep your eyes peeled. Yeah, keep your eyes peeled and your ears peeled for the part 2 of this podcast. Because what we'll do is, it'll probably be tomorrow that me and Danny get around to recording it. We're going to touch on the Lutz family. Now, without giving too much away, they were the first family to move into the house after the murders, and they lasted 28 days. And some of the stuff that's in the book, in the films, yes, it's dramatized, but it is also very spooky, some of the coincidences that go off. And just to whet your appetites even more, as Danny said earlier about Ed and Lorraine Warren going in and investigating the house, we're also going to talk about that on the paranormal episode. I quote from Lorraine, this is a genuine quote that she said when she came out of the house, that she believed that house was the closest to hell she ever wanted to get. What do you think of that?
I mean, I've got that quote written down as well. I mean, that is some strong words from someone who, the things that lady has witnessed and seen. That's some strong words. And yeah, absolutely spot on. The thing is about this case, the second episode we'll do on this, it actually gets even more interesting. It just gets even more bizarre, even though the murders are completely unexplained almost. It gets even more bizarre. It's interesting, man.
So just a bit of homework for the listeners as well. If you want to know the basis of what we're going to be talking about tomorrow, once you finish watching this, listening to this podcast, I want you to Google Amityville Ghost Boy, and I will tell you now that is a real photo. It's not been tampered with. Yeah. It's been decided by experts that it's not been tampered with. It's a real photo, and the day that photograph was taken, there wasn't a single child in the house.
Yeah, that is messed up, isn't it?
So
big time.
Yeah, I remember, because this is the thing. When I first started researching this case, this is really, really bad parenting when I think about it. I was at my nana's, and she had a documentary, and she used to love true crime documentaries.
As we all do nowadays, to be honest.
Yeah. And it was on the Amityville murders, and I watched it, and I had nightmares for ages. But then I thought, you know what, I'm going to research into this. And the Ghost Boy was one of the first photos that I ever saw. And as a 9-year-old looking into this, I didn't sleep for 6 months.
It's terrifying.
It is.
But yeah, seriously check that photo out. Because, again, there's no explanation for it whatsoever. and that was taken on the paranormal investigation, of which we'll go into. And just interested in just dead quick on that as well. Just really odd coincidence here, but the latitude of Amityville and where this house is exactly on the latitude lines. Do you know what the number is? It's 40.666. No bullshit. Promise you. Absolutely nuts, mate. So that is exactly on the latitudinal line that the Amityville house, horror house, if you will, on Ocean Avenue. That's exactly the latitude of that, which is just creepy.
That is
but there you go. So you can see
that
where the whole kind of demonology side creeps in, just because automatically people are going to think that. Do you know what I mean? So, it's going to be interesting to go into it, mate.
Exactly that. So, yes. On that note, I am going to go and cook dinner with every light in the house.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, Danny, thanks ever so much for coming on today. Danny is going to be a regular with us on this podcast. That was your first episode of 30 Minute Murder. Episode 2 will be recorded tomorrow, hopefully. If not, no problem at all. Things can happen. I was meant to record yesterday.
No bother.
Yeah. No, that's cool then. That's absolutely fantastic. So just another quick one, guys. We are now on YouTube. Please go and subscribe to our channel. We cannot do this without your support. We appreciate every single listener we get. We are so grateful to everybody that is currently listening, and we are just looking to bring you the best content that, you know, the podcasting world has to offer. I've been Will.
I've been Danny.
Danny has been Danny. If you want to
say mate, it's been really good to talk to you, man. And this is I'm well up for this. So let's keep it coming. And thanks, guys, for anyone who's listening. And please like and subscribe from that YouTube channel as well. And like Will said, we can't do it without your support, guys. So it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Excellent stuff. All right, guys, we'll see you all tomorrow. Thanks ever so much.
Take it easy.